Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast, dedicated to raising awareness, sharing IBD stories, and offering support for those with Crohn's and colitis. Together, we can share knowledge, experiences, and help show the world the many faces of IBD. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Gish, Crohn's warrior since 2006 and lifelong fitness fanatic. My guest today is Natalie Hayden, who writes the blog Lights, Camera Crohn's. Natalie is a former TV news anchor who has now dedicated herself to being an advocate for those battling inflammatory bowel disease and showing that a chronic illness doesn't have to dull your sparkle. Natalie was diagnosed with Crohn's in July 2005. 10 years later, after several hospitalizations, countless medications, and flare-ups, she underwent her first surgery in August 2015. Since then, she and her husband welcomed their firstborn child in March of 2017 and are currently awaiting the birth of their baby girl this January. Thank you so much for joining me today, Natalie, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, you've been doing amazing things, so I'm really excited to be talking with you.
Thank you.
Well, you've been battling Crohn's for almost 14 years now, and since we know that every IBD diagnosis and journey is different, why don't you start by telling me your own Crohn's story from your first flare and up to your diagnosis?
Sure. So I was very lucky in the fact that as I grew up through the years, I was a picture of health. I was an athlete. I played soccer year-round, basketball, track. Never even had an ear infection. Went to college at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, studying journalism with aspirations to be a news reporter and news anchor. And didn't have any issues my first 3 years. But my senior year, I started just feeling like my stomach was bothering me. You know, I actually joke that I thought I was eating too much Taco Bell with my roommates. It was just like, I never had any idea that it could possibly be IBD. Well, I graduated from college in May 2005, and shortly thereafter, I'm talking maybe less than 2 weeks, I started having these fevers that would top, 104 degrees.
Wow.
I would get these terrible stomach pains anytime I ate anything, and I started losing weight, and I was extremely fatigued, and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. I had grown up with some friends that did have IBD, so I was aware of what it was, but I, didn't want to think that that was what was actually happening to me. Well, we ended up going to a general practitioner, and first she thought it was my gallbladder. Then she thought it was my appendix. I went through some testing, blood work. I looked anemic, but she wasn't really able to pinpoint anything. After each ultrasound or test, she would just say, well, everything looks pristine, but my symptoms were persisting, so I knew something wasn't right. My mom's been a nurse forever, and she came home from work one day, and I had not showered. And I'm one of those people who, the minute I wake up in the morning, I shower and I get dressed. And it was, almost 5 p.m. at night. And she looked at me, and I was so lethargic and so sick on the couch. She said, you know what, we're just going to the ER. So we went to the ER, and they did an abdominal CAT scan along with a rectal exam. And it's kind of unique that the ER doctor actually diagnosed me with Crohn's disease in the emergency room.
Wow.
Which not many people, encompassed with their diagnosis. And it only took 2.5 months for me to get an answer. So I feel lucky in that regard. But it's one of those things where I went from being perfectly healthy to being blindsided by a diagnosis of a chronic illness at age 21. I was in the middle of my job search for my first job out of school, with aspirations to move anywhere across the United States on my own to follow my journalism dream. And it just felt like a ton of bricks were coming crashing down on me. I was hospitalized immediately because I was malnutrition. I was malnourished and dehydrated and so sick, and had a colonoscopy, my first, the next day. And they sent me home on 22 pills a day. And
Wow.
It was probably the most difficult couple weeks of my life, just coming to grips with all that was ahead. And I felt very lost and very, very upset. and didn't have anywhere to turn to. And at that time in 2005, there were really not any blogs I was aware of. I didn't even know about patient advocacy. It just kind of felt like they handed you this diagnosis and sent you home, and you were supposed to, go from there and be just fine. And it was very challenging and difficult.
Yeah, I definitely can understand that. I was diagnosed in 2006 and right about the same time. And it was just, there really wasn't a whole lot to follow or do back then. It's really amazing how different it is now. And when I would ask the doctors, what do I do? Can I do anything? It was just, you can't do anything. Take this medication and call the office if you need us. So
yeah.
It's and it's really surprising, just as you were saying, how fast it can come on and happen where you're blindsided. It's really remarkable. It's out of the blue. Mine was very similar. It was just all of a sudden your life has changed one day. So
yeah,
now,
it's a lot to handle, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now,
no matter what age you are.
Exactly. Does anyone else in your family have IBD, or were you the first? You said you had friends, but were you the first family?
Yeah, I'm the only person in my family with inflammatory bowel disease, but ironically, my cousin's wife, so she's not blood relative, but she was diagnosed with Crohn's the same week as me.
Oh, wow.
And she had been in our family for a very long time. They went to high school together and everything. So, and he's older than me. So we were both diagnosed the same week, went to the same practice, and endured much of the same from the beginning. So if anything, it was almost like she's been my lifeline. We joke that we're like Crohn sisters, and her husband is King Crohn, and it was this whole joke back then. But it was crazy that we were both diagnosed at the same time.
That is crazy, but kind of a blessing that you had someone to go through it together.
Definitely.
If you can look at it that way. But well, thank you for sharing that story, because one of the things I find that is so exciting is the IBD community is so supportive, and everyone that I've met is eager to share and talk and just learn from each other. So I really think it's valuable for us to be able to communicate, learn how we're different, learn how we're similar, and figure out a path to go. So
exactly, because, every patient journey is so unique and different, but at the same time, we can all relate to so much, whether it's being on prednisone or getting that diagnosis or navigating relationships. We can all relate on so many different levels, and it's like talking to a person you've been friends with your whole life, even though it's the first time you've talked to them.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing. Well, you seem to be in a pretty good spot right now managing your IBD. So tell me if that's true. Tell me, what did it take for you to finally get to that point?
I'm definitely in a good spot right now. I am 36 weeks pregnant, so I attribute much of my remission state to that because the hormones with pregnancy, there's a rule of thirds. 1/3 of people get better, 1/3 stay pretty the same, and then the other third get worse. But I went into my pregnancy with very few symptoms and, in quote, remission. I'm always hesitant to use that word because it can change on, the drop of a dime. But I went into my pregnancy doing well, and it's carried through almost this full 9 months now. So we'll see what happens postpartum, which is always what makes me nervous because you can tend to flare once you reach that pregnancy hormone. But it's taken me a long time. The first 5 years of my disease was a lot of trial and error. As I said, the first decade was incredibly isolating because I kept my disease a secret from everybody. I told friends and family and coworkers, but I worked in the television news business for 10 years in 3 different states, and I did not want to be labeled, Natalie, the sick news anchor. So I never let the viewers or the community know what I was going through and battling each day that I sat on that news desk. So the moment that I left the news media in 2014, something just clicked in me, and I can't even remember what. It's 2014, and I thought, you know what? Now's the time that I can use my story to inspire others and show them that there is hope, and you can follow your dreams. You can live a full life. And I started sharing my journey on social media, and in that moment, I just felt so much stronger and like I could really face anything. And I've also just been so lucky because I've been on the same biologic drug for more than a decade and haven't built up antibodies. I have had flare-ups through the years, but nothing that I haven't obviously made it through.
Right.
And I do attribute a lot of my strength to finding a man who was able to see me as more than my disease, and who actually makes me feel empowered in my vulnerability, and who supports me every step of the way. My husband, Bobby, is a true cheerleader and champion for IBD. He's there for me every second of the day, and no matter what, every hospitalization we've had together, he's never left my side. He spent every single night in the hospital with me, cheered me on with every injection, sat in doctor's appointments. He's always there. So
That's
I think
wonderful.
having a strong support network of both friends and family definitely makes you feel like you can take it on. And just as a mom, I was able to leave the working world about 2 years ago. I started working from home as a full-time advocate, blogger, freelancer, and just having that flexibility of hours and the flexibility of a work environment, even the stress of not having to use a public bathroom, the little things like being able to wear comfortable pants while I'm at work, at home. It's just all those little things I think make a big difference and lets you put your health first.
It really does. It kind of shifts your mindset when you're able to know that, like, I'm in a safe place today. I don't have to leave the house. I can do whatever it is I need to. And it really does feel like a weight is lifted off your shoulders when you don't have to stress about those things, and it allows you to relax. And it's it's such a complex disease where, stress doesn't necessarily cause things, but it doesn't help things.
No. For me, stress is my biggest trigger as far as my disease activity would go. I would say if I get very emotional about something. So, for instance, my grandmother, today's actually a year she passed away. I was extremely close with her, and when something happens in my life that's like a big monumental issue or upsetting situation, I've landed up in the hospital just because I get so upset by my surroundings and, my personal relationships and things like that. So it is interesting how there can be a correlation for some of us with stress and our diseases.
Yes, there definitely is. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your pregnancy. I want to kind of talk about pregnancy and IBD. You said it's been, you're going really well. And I've heard a lot of the same things of what you just said, where it's some women, they'll just flare up and then they're stuck in a flare for the whole pregnancy, or they suddenly come out of a flare and they do great. So tell me a little bit, were you on medications when you got pregnant? Did you stay on medication? Tell me a little bit about what you went through.
So, I have been on my medication since July 2008. I've been on Humira, and I couple that with mesalamine, and then I take folic acid and a prenatal and a vitamin D and calcium, all because of malnutrition of IBD, really. But I do that whether I'm pregnant or not. So I've been on a prenatal since I had my surgery in 2015, because the doctors knew I was getting married and they knew I was interested in starting a family, so they just got my body prepped. And ever since, I've been on folic acid and prenatal ever since, which it doesn't hurt you at all. And it, with the way that our bodies now absorb, it's a great way to get those extra nutrients. I would highly recommend talking to your OB and your GI, and it can be a team effort. And when I'm not pregnant, I'm on just 1 milligram of folic acid a day. When I'm pregnant, I take 2 milligrams, one for me and one for the baby, which is not typical for those people who do not have IBD. So something to keep in mind for women in our community, that is beneficial for you, because you're not only bolstering the folic acid in your body, but also your baby's, and they're not taking away that nutrient from you then. So I have stayed on my injections. I've never missed any for over 10 years. And I do them from the start of my pregnancy until the day I deliver. I did it 2 days before my C-section with my son. And my last injection this pregnancy is supposed to be the day of my C-section, but we're moving it up. I'm like, that's a lot going on in one day. So I'm doing it the day before. And with my wedding, we moved it a couple days earlier just so I could get a little boost of the medication going into the wedding weekend. So there is some flexibility in that. But I'm one of the people who thinks very strongly about staying on your medication in pregnancy, because you have to be a safe haven for the baby. And if you rock the boat or try to change things up and rely too heavily on that pregnancy hormone, you can really set yourself up for disaster. And then it's a whole different situation when you're flaring and there's life inside of you versus when it's just you.
Exactly.
So you really kind of have to it's a mental game. I'm not going to say it's easy to give yourself an injection of a biologic while you have a baby kicking in your stomach at the same time. It gets emotional at times, but at the same time, I've seen my son thrive beautifully. He'll be 2 in March, and he's a picture of health. I think he's maybe had 2 colds, and he's just, doing wonderful. So I see him each and every day. So that gives me confidence that my little girl will do just the same. And, there's a strong community of IBD moms out there that are so vocal and passionate, and we're all available online. And there's actually a group called IBD Moms. It's brand new. It's launching right as we speak. I think in January is really going to be the main launch of it. But there's just moms who get it, who live your reality and understand what's going through your mind every step of the way, from conceiving to leading up to starting a family, to being pregnant, to having a baby, and just being a mom. And that never existed before. It was always kind of one of those things where you just kind of Google and there's all different responses. And to this day, even through my blog, it's amazing. That's the most questions I get are, do you stay on your medication? What's it like to be pregnant? Can I even be pregnant? Is my body able to do this? And our fertility is really not affected any differently than a typical person. It's more so, where you are in your disease state. If you're flaring and having a rough year, it's not smart to try and get pregnant because oftentimes that'll carry over throughout the pregnancy. So something I've also done is my GI does a colonoscopy on me right before we start to conceive, like the month before, so that I get a better, picture of what's going on. And she'll literally walk in the recovery room and say, "You've got the green light to try for baby." So I think that's something that gives me comfort going into it as well.
Yes, that definitely would. Now, when you became pregnant with your son for your first child, you mentioned the IBD Moms group online is going to be a new group. Was there anyone that you had with your first son that you could look up to and talk about IBD and pregnancy with, or did you have to go it alone?
I really did that alone. I was blogging at the time, but I didn't know of many advocates who were moms. I had connected with a couple people, but I was still pretty new to all of it because I got pregnant in July 2016. So my blog was a year. My blog actually launched the day before I found out I was pregnant, to give you an idea.
Oh, wow.
It was a big week for me. So I was very new to all of it. So if anything, it was one of those things where I would share a story and then it would connect me to somebody with a child. But now it's been so different because I've had the chance and opportunity to attend conferences and be at events where I meet these online advocates in person. And it's unbelievable because you have all these friendships virtually and then you meet people in person and they're exactly what you expect and you just instantly connect. And now IBD Moms is already on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and you have a whole group of women that are readily available. There's also another group that I find to be awesome that just launched this past year called Mamas Facing Forward. It's for women with chronic illnesses that want to be moms, are moms, and it's wonderful because it's not just IBD, it's all different types of autoimmune conditions and diseases. So that's not as fine-tuned to our community, but there's still so many of us that are in both IBD Moms and Mamas Facing Forward. So it's a safe space because otherwise, when you just talk to a friend who's of perfect health, they can empathize, but they really don't understand, quite everything that goes on. So I would say lean on those communities and know you're not alone.
Well, that's fantastic. Those are amazing resources. I had no idea that were out there. I don't have children myself, but so I'll find all those links. And if you've got them, feel free to send them to me. But I'll put them in the show notes because I think those are so valuable. I mean, just what you're saying for people to be able to ask a question to someone else who's going through the exact same thing is very different from someone who's just empathizing and saying, well, I'm sorry, but they don't truly understand all the stuff that's going on in your head.
Yes.
So as IBD patients, we know how individual Crohn's and colitis can be, and they really are. But tell me a little bit, I want to talk about food and what impact IBD does or doesn't have on the way you eat? Because I've noticed over the years when I talk with people, food is so individual, and the doctors are reluctant to usually say do this or do that because it's so different for everyone. So tell me a little bit about your experience, and even being on medication, do you still watch what you eat?
Yes, so I agree 100%. Diet is such a hotly contested topic in the IBD community.
Probably everywhere.
When people ask me to write about it, I kind of just pause, and it's my least favorite topic because it's so individualized that I never feel like I can really capture, what it is for each person, because we all react differently to food. And if there was one blanket diet that worked for everybody as a magic bullet, trust me, we would all do it. I do think it's all about, finding what your trigger foods are and what your safe foods are. And we can all do that universally. When I was first diagnosed, they put me on a low residue diet for about 9 months, which for those who don't know is not eating, raw fruits and vegetables. It's difficult. It's eating all the unhealthy things, all the white pastas, the white bread, the meats,
noodles and lots of noodles.
Yes, lots of carbs. And I was someone that's always loved fruit and vegetables, and that was really hard on me. And at first, back then, they almost made it sound like that's just going to be my life forever. And I'll never forget the first time I had a salad. My parents came up to my television station in Minnesota that I was working at, and I had a salad in public for the first time in 9 months, and I broke down at the restaurant and cried. Just because, when you go 9 months without eating lettuce or something, it's a weird feeling, But as the years passed by, I slowly started to reintegrate all of the fruits and vegetables back into my diet. And I started to see, when I eat cantaloupe, sometimes I'll get a stomachache. When I eat watermelon, sometimes I'll get a stomachache. So I eat those carefully. I'll say, so for instance, if I'm about to give a speech, or if I'm at a big, work event, or if I'm doing something with family all day, I will stay away from food that can maybe cause me pain. But if I'm sitting at home and I want to be a little risky, I'll eat some of my son's cantaloupe off his high chair and just see what happens. Because, hey, I've got nowhere to go. If I need to run to the bathroom 20 times, it's fine.
I've had those moments where it's like, you know what? I'm just going to eat that and figure out what happens.
Sometimes you need to do it. I feel that nuts and popcorn are triggers for me as well. But, if somebody has peanut M&Ms, I might take a couple if I feel like I want to play a little Russian roulette. But I don't do those things if I'm flaring. So it's all about how I'm feeling that day and how confident I am. Through this pregnancy, I've actually had popcorn a couple times. My mom thinks I'm crazy when I do that. I'm like, don't tell my husband. But I just wanted it, and I'm like, I feel so great right now. I think I can handle it. I didn't have any problems. But then other times, I'll eat it when I'm not pregnant, and it's immediate gnawing pain in my stomach, and I know it was a mistake.
Well, so and I think it's kind of tricky.
Have to just navigate that.
And it's kind of tricky too when we do have those days where we're feeling good, and it's like, surely I can eat that and be just fine, and we almost kind of forget how terrible it can be.
Yes, and then we quickly are reminded within a matter of minutes and think, okay, this is why I don't eat this typically. But I haven't had a beer since I was diagnosed. I don't drink Diet Pop. Because when I was first diagnosed, I drank like a Coke Zero right after I got out of the hospital, and I almost ended back in the hospital just drinking that.
Wow.
And it was enough of a painful situation where I've never had it since. So if I do drink pop, I drink, and I say pop because I'm from Chicago. For those listeners out there,
not soda.
Soda, not my thing. So if I do drink pop, I drink regular, but I try to even stay away from that. So it's just kind of one of those things. If I go in the hospital though, and I'm, dealing with a bowel obstruction, I throw myself back onto a low residue diet. It's just kind of like it ebbs and flows, but I really feel like I'm able to eat 90% of what I want to eat. I don't eliminate really anything. So
that's wonderful.
I feel lucky in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful spot to be in. So
Yes,
you
absolutely.
you juggle a lot. You had your television news career for many years, and then you started a
Hmm.
family. Now you're blogging, advocating. What advice would you give to IBD patients on how to find that balance in their life and work and family?
hmm I think in time, I really didn't waste any time. I actually got diagnosed in July and moved off to my first TV job in October,
Oh,
8 hours away from family and friends. I didn't know a soul. And that was difficult. I mean, I was still on the 22 pills a day, about
mm-hmm.
60 milligrams of prednisone at the time. It was a lot, and I, to this day, don't even really know what was going through my head as far as you were just diagnosed with a chronic illness. Now
Yeah.
you're going to move away and follow your dream 2 months later. And I'm proud of that decision, but I don't really know how I came to it. Honestly, it's such a blur because it was such a difficult time in my life. I think I was just kind of like trying to have some normalcy
Mm-hmm.
and try to, show that this disease wasn't going to rule my life. But I don't know if that happened to me now, if I'd be able to have that strength and that ability to just say, I don't care that I have this. I'm moving away from everybody I know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just, having patience with yourself, listening to the symptoms in your body as the years go by. I'm sure you're the same way since you've had it almost as long as I have,
Mm-hmm.
that when something is festering and something is starting,
Yes.
and you know what symptoms to watch out for. At the beginning, it can be kind of difficult, and I used to try to be a superhero and waited till like the last possible moment to go to the
Mm-hmm.
hospital. And the doctors would always say, you need to come in as soon as you feel anything because this is going to get even worse,
Right.
If you allow this to go on, you're setting yourself up for even more disaster. So
Yes.
as hard as it is, you have to recognize when to slow down, when to say no, when to put your health first. And it can be easier said than done, but
Mm-hmm.
I try to just be mindful of when I'm starting to slowly notice a change.
Yes. That's great advice. And I think it's easy to get wrapped up in life and forget to pay attention to the signs and forget to pay attention to our bodies. And we have to. I
Yeah.
think we really do have to.
hmm
So, with this being a disease of remission and flares and remissions and flares, what do you do when you do have a flare up, or even if it's minor, from minor to severe? What do you
hmm
do to remind yourself that this is just a hiccup, that it's not the forever, and how do you keep that mindset?
That's a really good question. I think something that needs to be talked about more often because so much of what IBD is not physical, so much is mental,
Mm-hmm.
because it really is a mind game. Because even when you're feeling well, you know deep down that the next hour you could be hospitalized.
Mm-hmm.
Your health can change so quickly. It is petrifying at times.
Yes.
And you don't know what the next day is going to bring. You don't even know when you make dinner plans, like how you're going to be feeling in a few hours.
Yeah.
So I do feel that that's something that is a constant challenge and something that's always kind of in the back of my mind. When you think of like a good conscience and a bad conscience,
Yeah.
there's always some voice, telling you, well, this could happen, or I hope, don't be too confident.
Yeah.
I always feel like I personify Crohn's as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and I try not to allow him to control me. But I
I like
I
that.
think back to all of my prior flares, and I know the drill. I know what's going to happen in ER. I know what's going to happen when I'm hospitalized. I
Mm-hmm.
try to take it a day at a time. It's always it's a setback situation, but at the same time, I try to keep perspective and
Mm-hmm.
try not to get overwhelmed. For the longest time, surgery was my biggest fear. But now that I've had 18 inches of my intestine removed, I've had a C-section, I'm having another C-section 3 weeks from Monday. Surgery really doesn't scare me anymore because I know exactly what that incisional pain feels like and what
Yeah.
it's like to recover.
Mm-hmm.
But for the longest time, that was always very scary to me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What it's funny, I was going to say I kind of described because you were talking about how you never know how you're going to feel in a few hours or things like that, but I've often described
hmm
Crohn's as kind of like walking on a tightrope where
Yeah.
when you're walking it, you feel great and you're conquering the world and it's so cool, but then one little slip and you don't even know it's coming and you're just hanging on for dear life.
Yes, you
It's
really are, and that's what's heartbreaking to me for the young people that have this disease, the children. It's imagine
Yes.
how scary that must be. You know, they're at school during the day, and then all of a sudden they're flaring, and they can't even really understand or comprehend what's going on in their intestines. And it's the young patients that really inspire me to be strong.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even as an adult, I have a hard enough time wrapping my head around some of these things, but I can't even imagine if I would have been diagnosed at, 8, 9, 10 years old. Just a whole different. Well,
It sure is. And those impressionable teen years and everything. I mean, everybody has a difficult journey no matter when they get diagnosed, but my heart really breaks for the youth.
mine does too. So tell me, what's been the biggest challenge you've faced since having Crohn's, and how did you get through it?
I would say starting my Humira injections in 2008 was one of the most emotional and pivotal moments for me, because back then, before citrate-free Humira, which is pain-free, I've been on that since September, and it's phenomenal. It's completely altered and changed my patient journey. I mean, I'm talking injections that used to be the worst pain I've ever endured from an injection or a needle in my life to just non-existent. I mean, you put the shot in and you literally smile. It doesn't even hurt at all.
That's amazing. So, I did Humira really for a few years, and so
you know
I know the pain, and I'm really impressed at the number of new medications that are coming out. And I saw when you were blogging about you were so excited to try the pain-free Humira, so I'm excited to hear that it is actually pain-free.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And there was a lot of anxiety leading up because people say pain-free, but is it really pain-free? You're still putting a needle in your leg or your stomach. But it is legitimately pain-free. And I used to have to do a whole production even after a decade of being on it, you know, where my husband would like sit next to me. I'd ice my leg. I'd have a reward for myself afterwards, like ice cream or a treat.
Yep.
Now I do it while he's at work or while he's bathing my son. I do it all on my own. 10 seconds, and I'm just in awe that this is my new reality.
That's wonderful.
So just injecting that loading dose of 4 Humira shots in 2008 and starting a biologic drug, you know, before I met my husband, before I started a family, a lot of worries back then. What are the side effects going to be? All of that was a lot and overwhelming. And then also just going through the whole bowel resection situation.
Yes.
That was an example of being blindsided. I was at work giving a presentation to my entire floor. And then all of a sudden, my stomach just started killing me. And I ran into the bathroom, and I actually blacked out in there.
Oh, wow.
And I was rushed. I drove home, which was not smart.
No.
Yeah, I'm like, how the heck did I come home? I don't even know. I drove home, and my mother-in-law, I was engaged to my husband at that point. She came over. I was throwing up on the floor, drove me to the hospital. I had a bowel obstruction, and they did an MRE, and they discovered I needed surgery. So those 2 moments were the most challenging in my patient journey.
Wow. Those are definitely challenging moments. I think you kind of probably do a lot of the same things I do, where it sounds like you wait till the last minute to go to the hospital, and where you drove home instead of driving yourself to the hospital. I relate to that quite a bit. And so if anyone who is listening, please go to the hospital first. Do not, it's not the way to do it. Go to the hospital and get taken care of.
It's really scary because I don't know how you feel, but in those moments, I don't know if it's the anxiety of the flare-up or the pain, but I've actually had moments where I actually ended up in a grocery store bathroom the same year because I was in so much pain from my obstruction. I lost all feeling in my arms and in my legs.
Oh, wow.
And I was by myself in a public bathroom, screaming and all alone, and I couldn't feel my limbs. And it was crazy because I couldn't even use my hands to call anybody on my phone because they were like frozen in these like weird positions from, I think, all the tension, anxiety. And I accidentally called my mom in Chicago, and I live in St. Louis, and she just heard me screaming. I wasn't even holding the phone. And she thought something bad was happening to me, like I was like getting linked or something. It was like very scary for her. And then I was able to tell her. She called my husband, who then had to rush from work and get me from the hospital or from the grocery store But then we went to the hospital. So it's just try to get to the hospital as soon as you can so you avert those types of crisis situations.
Yes.
Because when you put yourself in a public situation like that, that can even cause other issues to happen,
Exactly.
So you really got to be careful.
You do. That's great advice. So I want
It's more traumatic than anything.
Yeah.
Than just going through all of that. It's unnecessary.
It is definitely unnecessary. And I kind of, in the back of my head, I think about a story kind of similar to that. But I had, there was one day, this was a few years ago, and I just, out of the blue, I dropped to my knees. The pain was so intense, and my skin got pale, and I was sweating, and it felt like my intestine had just ripped in half. And so instead of going to the hospital, I called my boyfriend at the time. We're now married, but so I called him, and I'm like, can you stay on the phone with me? Because if I pass out, then I need you to call an ambulance if I stop talking. But maybe I can get through this. So just stay on the line with me.
Yeah, that's very similar.
Not a good decision.
We know what it means. As much as we hate, all that's going to happen once we get to the hospital, I think we try to do everything we can. We think we can still be in the driver's seat and in control. But when it gets to that level degree of a flare-up, it's out of our hands. We need to have medical attention. And you don't want to, we're both examples of we needed to be in the hospital,
Yeah.
So it's scary to navigate, though, and it's easier said than done when you look back. Hindsight's 20/20. In the moment, I never thought I should drive to the hospital right now. It didn't even cross my mind. I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to pack a hospital bag. My mother-in-law is going to drive me. It was all like nice and easy.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Happened very differently.
Yes.
Well, I do want to talk about your role as an IBD advocate. So, what was it that really compelled you to just leave the TV news industry and put all of your effort into becoming an advocate?
That's a good question. I had met my husband in 2013, and we were long distance while I was a news anchor in Springfield, Illinois. I'm from Chicago, so that's about 3 hours from where I grew up. And we've been, commuting an hour and a half back and forth for about a year and a half. And in that time, I had 3 bowel obstructions, all while in St. Louis visiting him. So I knew that deep down that he was the one I wanted to spend my life with. And my doctor was actually saying, my GI was saying that he thought the morning show schedule, because I was a morning anchor, getting up at 2 in the morning, 5 days a week, functioning on very little sleep. Meals were all over the place because of those hours. At 8 a.m. you want to eat a cheeseburger. It's very weird.
Yes.
Because you're just like all your body clock's messed up. So he actually wrote a note to my news director and had me break my contract about 60 days early because he said that this was contributing to my Crohn's flaring up.
Wow.
And I knew I wanted to move to St. Louis too. So I made the decision to get out of the television business because as much as I love television, I still do. It's very difficult to balance a chronic illness and those crazy hours and work schedule and a normal life. I knew I wanted to be a mom someday, and I wanted to be married, and just family's always been my priority. So for the first time ever, I put, in my career, I put family first. And I'm not saying you can't do it all, but it's hard to do, and you also have a severe chronic illness. So I left TV, and I really don't know what changed in me where I just said, now I'm going to post something on Facebook telling everybody I have Crohn's disease. But I did. Shortly thereafter, like weeks after I left the business, I shared it on social media. And then I ended up having more bowel obstructions and surgeries. And at that time, I thought, you know what? On the 10-year anniversary, which was in 2015, basically a week after my 10-year anniversary is when I had my bowel resection, I said, in the next year, I want to launch a blog. And it took a lot of planning on my part because I wanted it to be unique. I wanted it to be positive. I wanted to write weekly, which is, I don't know many bloggers who blog weekly. Yeah. I blog every Monday, and I've never missed a Monday. It's been 2.5 years. And people are often like, oh, when you have your daughter next month, you're not going to do weekly. I'm like, yes, I am. I actually have my content all set until March.
Oh, that's awesome.
What I'm going to be writing about. Because I'm so passionate about it that it doesn't feel like a job to me. It feels like a passion project.
Yes.
And people, are so sweet and say I help them out a lot, but it's a win-win for me too, because when I'm able to connect with people like you
Mm-hmm.
and other people on Instagram, I get emails and, text
Yes.
messages and all these different things. I feel empowered when I'm at my lowest.
Yes.
So, people will write me and I'll be like, that's a great story, Eddie, or I love your story, I want to share it. And I would never have that rapport with the community if I didn't have my blog. So it's just been, it's grown so much through the years. And it's something I just love doing.
Mm-hmm. I completely relate to that. It's been just getting this podcast set up and going and reaching out and talking with more people. It really is a passion. It's so amazing to be able to start sharing things and learning. And there's so much that I learned and found hope and motivation and inspiration from all the other people that I eventually stumbled across and met, that it's like I want to do the same. So it's
awesome. And this podcast is great. I'm just so honored to be a part of it. And it's funny because, you found someone on Instagram and it's like I get to hear your voice now and I get to hear your story.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps carrying on. It snowballs.
It
so
does.
As soon as people open up and share their story, you just open yourself up to so much more support. So God forbid my next hospitalization compared to what it was in 2015 where I didn't know anybody in the community.
Right.
Now I'd be able to text or email or write people on Instagram. I have like hundreds of people
instant
that
support.
Could be supportive. So it's very different.
That's amazing. Well, talk to me about, because you get to talk to a lot of people with IBD, and just as you said, you share their stories. But do you find that some people still have a hard time talking about this disease? I mean, I know you said it took you 10 years to talk about it. It's taken me 10 years to finally start talking about it. Do you find that that's common?
Yes, especially. And this is, I don't want to say it's like stereotypical, but in my findings, it seems that teenage boys and young 20-somethings, their moms oftentimes reach out to me because they do not want to share their journey and they're very embarrassed and they kind of just act like they don't have it.
Yeah.
And there's not as many male advocates out there, you'll notice, in the IBD community. So I wish that more men would feel comfortable and more vulnerable. They have it just as bad as we do, but they're not as visible. So you'll be able to see online that there's just a handful, really, of men and teenage guys that are open. And I wish more would come out and share, because I think that there's so many men out there that are yearning for that type of relationship. I can tell a man all the advice I can, but it's not the same as hearing from a fellow guy, what's it like dealing with this? Or, I can't give that perspective,
And especially for the teenagers who I know, even early on for me as a young adult, I didn't talk about it much, but I searched for people that I could kind of silently follow and watch and learn from. And so I'm sure that there are just a ton of teenagers out there, boys and girls, who are who are maybe not talking about it, but they're looking for that role model or for someone that they can emulate and get some advice from.
Yes, 100%.
So how has being an advocate shaped your own view of life with Crohn's?
It's definitely given me a lot of perspective. I'm very positive all the time, which I think some people, that have very, very severe cases may think, well, this is not possible for everybody, and really kind of almost get upset and angry at the advocates who try and make it seem like, you can do whatever you want to do with your life, and that's not possible for everybody. And I understand that, but at the same time, I've been told by multiple GIs I have severe aggressive Crohn's. Obviously, I've been on a biologic for over a decade. I've had 8 inches of my intestine removed, abscesses, flare-ups, bowel obstructions, you name it. I feel like I've had quite a few challenges thrown my way, and I haven't allowed that to stop me from my career, from getting married, from having kids. Yes, I have Crohn's, but to me, it's all such a mind game. It's part of me, but it's not all of me.
Yes.
And I think for many people that are struggling and that are in the hospital 24/7, I mean, there's people that are very, very, very sick. Let's not downplay this.
Yes,
who really can't work and who can't do these things. But for the majority of us, once you get well maintained, once you know how to control your disease, it is possible to live a full life. There's many of us who do so.
Yeah.
So I think just being an advocate, it's opened up my eyes to, almost a lack of education that's out there, because many people, it's almost scary to me. They'll be on prednisone and they'll write me, and their GI never even told them, this is going to increase your appetite. This is going to give you puffy cheeks. It's almost scary how uneducated so many people are, and it makes me sad that, some people don't have friends or family that they can lean on, and they have the mental health aspect of it where they're struggling, and it can almost be overwhelming as an advocate because, I'm sitting on the couch with my husband, and I'll get an email, and it's, somebody that's really crying out for help.
Yes.
And my son's playing, and I've been working a little bit on my dog and taking care of him, and I literally respond almost immediately to every message I get.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming to me, because even when I'm feeling well, I'm dealing with so many sickly people and situations that it can kind of take me out of my remission and my comfort, because I go to that dark place, of what they're going through.
Yeah, because you know exactly what they're going through.
Yeah, it's a tough spot sometimes. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure.
Has there been anything that's really surprised you that you didn't expect to learn or find out while you've been an advocate?
That's a good question. I think just almost how prevalent it is. You hear about the statistics all the time, but when you connect with people on social media all across the world, and they're all living your same reality, and you can look in the mirror some days, or maybe you're stuck in the bathroom, and somebody's comment to you will have a lasting impact and just empower you so much. Someone that just wrote you and says, your story and your words help me get through this, XYZ. It's amazing how one email or one comment can make such a difference. And even the ones that are negative, those stay with you too. So
yes. Yes, they do.
It goes back and forth, but it's a conversation, and people need to understand that words have power. And I think sometimes what's interesting as an advocate that can be disconcerting at times is that we are speaking obviously to the IBD community, but I'm also trying to educate my friends and family who do not have Crohn's and colitis about what my reality is. And oftentimes I feel like that falls on deaf ears, and that they just scroll right past it. Obviously don't read what I'm writing, because when they see me in person, and, all my social media is just covered with articles and different things. And they don't even say, so how are you feeling? I mean, I would say that happens to me 95% of the time. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, my mom and I are just, it's crazy to us, because it's like, I'm so vocal and apparent about what is going on. And those close to me oftentimes act like I'm completely healthy and don't even take the time or effort to read a 500-word article to get to know me better,
Well, and
so
I think
it's kind of upsetting.
It can, and I think it's hard too, because I think a lot of IBD patients I've met, I know I do it, but we try to put on this happy face, like you said. I mean, you went through your whole news career, you didn't want anyone to know, and I've had my fair share of hiding how I really feel, and so I think people get so used to seeing us that we're putting on, our best foot forward. And so we look like we're doing okay, but inside we're just falling apart and disintegrating. I think it's hard.
It's a blessing and a curse that it's an invisible illness, because as much as I enjoy the fact that I can look like a normal person and look healthy, at the same time, it's almost scary how just by putting a smile on your face, you can hide everything that's going on.
Yes.
Which I think fellow caretakers, spouses, parents need to be mindful of, because I've done this multiple times, and if you really know me, you can't tell when I'm flaring and when I'm perfectly healthy. And usually my telltale signal is I just stop. I kind of shut off, and I don't talk very much, and I kind of just smile. And those close to me can read it almost immediately, because as you can tell, I'm a chatty Cathy. I'm a very talkative, bubbly person. But for those who are just casual acquaintances, they probably just think, oh, she's not talking very much.
Oh, she's just being quiet and smiling.
And I use when I shut down and I don't talk, it's really me just trying to get through the moments of pain and just kind of like go to a happy place, you know, and try to,
Yes.
like you can barely listen to what's being said to you in the moment when people are around you. You're just trying to get through that public situation.
Yeah.
And it's difficult.
It is. And I think a lot of people relate to that. I know I definitely relate to that. I've had many dinners or nights out where I've just been quiet and I'm just focusing on if I can keep the pain down, we'll get home eventually.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
it's a very interesting disease, to say the least.
It is. It is. Very complicated.
It is complicated. Well, before we wrap up, I want people, if people want to learn more about what you do and follow your work as an advocate, where's the best place for them to go online?
Sure. So my blog is Lights, Camera Crohn, an Unobstructed View, and the website is lightscameracrohn.com. And I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find me as Natalie Ann Hayden on Instagram, ANN. And then on Facebook and on Twitter, actually, my maiden name was Spracio for my TV days. But if you look up Natalie Hayden on Twitter, it'll come up that way. Facebook, my community page is Natalie A. Spracio, and that's S as in Sam, P as in Peter, A-R-A, C as in cat, I-O. And I post fresh content and articles every single Monday, sometimes on Wednesdays as well. And I'm always looking for story ideas. So if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, or if you have a personal story or journey that you think would inspire and help others, shoot me an email. Do not be shy. I love hearing from people.
Fantastic. I'll put all that in the show notes so that there will be links and people can reach out. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share with our listeners today?
I just want to implore everybody to find your voice and recognize that your journey and your story matters and has so much power. It can really change somebody's life, especially those that are newly diagnosed, who we all remember how it felt to be blindsided and be told you have a chronic illness for the rest of your life. A disease for which there's no cure, a disease that is going to be a daily battle. Just know you're not alone in that, and find power and just love the person that you are despite your disease, because I always believe that God gives his toughest lessons to his greatest teachers. And there's a reason you have this disease. You might not know it right now, but years down the road, you'll have much better clarity.
Those are wonderful words. Thank you. Those are very, very good.
Thank you.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. I really mean it from, the bottom of my heart. Thank you for talking with me and sharing your story. I think it's so valuable, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get, more people on and just sharing their stories and opening up the conversation inside the IBD community and teaching those who don't know anything about it, helping them to learn as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have an IBD story, either as a patient or a family member that you'd like to share as a guest on this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me an email at crohnsfitnessfood@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me and my Crohn's journey, follow me on Instagram using @crohnsfitnessfood, or visit my blog for in-depth articles about my struggles and victories with Crohn's through diet, fitness, and lifestyle at www.crohnsfitnessfood.com. And finally, remember, be strong, be grateful, and be the warrior that you are.